I'm gonna laugh a lot through this because it's freaking hilarious. I did not wake up. I wasn't questioning my religion. I was a totally faithful Jehovah's Witness. So along comes husband number three. One of the elders in that congregation pulls me aside and he says, "Oh, we know about you. We know about you. You're an apostate." And I go, "What? What?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, your husband's told us all about you." And I'm like, "What the heck? I'm a regular pioneer." So I had to recreate my life. Here I am, an active Jehovah's Witness, and I'm helping these Mormons reestablish their life post cult, never imagining that at some point I was going to need this myself.
Now, this is one interesting story with many twists and turns. I'm going to introduce you to the guest in just 1 second. You gotta watch this whole interview though. This is Seeds of Awakening. My name is Amani's channel. This is your home for ExJW stories and from others who've had spiritual awakenings. But before you watch this video, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Remember, I'm trying to reach 1,000 episodes. Just hit the subscribe button and notification bell. But if nothing else, just thumbs up, like the video. Or else maybe you want to share this with someone who may find it interesting. Alright, so I'm going to bring in our guest. I'm just going to let her share her story. Her name is Deanna Moore. She lives in Ecuador, and her story is really remarkable.
Hello.
Hey, Dina. So we have Dina Moore, who hails from Ecuador now. She's lived in the States, but live abroad. So I'm sure we're going to get into your story, which is wild. But you come from a tradition of Jehovah's Witnesses. You're a multi-generational, traditionally, that's what you were. Why don't you tell your story, where you're from and how you're
Five
raised?
generations.
Wow.
It's my spiritual heritage.
Right. And then you sort of got booted out. Basically, you got labeled a apostate. So I know there's a lot to your story, but
Yeah,
why don't you
you
give
know
us
what?
the
What's crazy about this is, most people leave the religion because they woke up. I did not wake up. I did not wake up. I was a totally faithful Jehovah's Witness. I wasn't questioning my religion. In fact, as we'll get into the details, but I was, I was so dedicated, man. And because of a vindictive ex-elder, an elder husband, he told everyone that I was an apostate. And, that's pretty much a nail in your coffin. I mean, it's almost like saying you're racist. Nobody needs any proof, and you're just immediately condemned. And so that's what happened. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah, she's an apostate." And I'm like, "What the heck? I'm a regular pioneer." You know what I mean? And so I get, booted out being accused of being an apostate. So I'm outside, and so I had to recreate my life. I had to recreate my life. And then it was probably about a year after that when I woke up and realized I grew up in a cult.
wow.
So I kind of did it backwards from how normal people do it.
Yeah. So take me back to, I guess, initially when you were booted out, like you got married several times, you got disfellowshipped several times.
Hmm.
Give us like a short version of what happened.
Okay, so I'll kind of start a little bit from the beginning. I got baptized at 10. I came from 5 generations of solid Jehovah's Witnesses. They weren't the ones that were kind of weak in the truth. They're elders, ministerial servants, pioneers, Bethelites. And, the expectation is you get baptized as soon as possible and you follow that path. And we lived in New York. We were right outside of Bethel. So being right outside of Bethel, I think probably the Jehovah's Witnesses that are near the headquarters probably even have a more powerful religious influence than if you never get to see Bethel, because all of our special talks, memorial talks, all of that were given by heavies. They were given by governing body members. I lived in the Hamptons. So, it's this total resort area right outside of Bethel. So even if they weren't coming out to give special talks and stuff, they're coming out to enjoy the weekend and enjoy the beach and stuff like that. So I had many interactions with most of the governing body. Um, and so there's this like really intense, it was growing up very intensely, one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I was baptized at 10, homeschooled, of course, homeschooled.
Yeah.
And so I had the privilege of starting to regular pioneer when I was 11.
Wow.
And because it was a resort kind of area, the English congregation territory was very difficult. lots of second homes, lots of vacant homes, a lot of, unproductive territory. So I joined the Spanish congregation. There was a Spanish congregation that was forming there. So I learned Spanish at the age of, I think I was 12 when I joined the Spanish congregation. And like most Spanish congregations, you have a bajillion Bible studies, especially, back in the 80s. The Spanish people, the Spanish culture is very Bible oriented. So by the time I was 12, is a small congregation. It was just beginning. I think we had like maybe 25 publishers or something. And we all had like 20 and 25 Bible studies. We had tons and tons of Bible studies. And so that was what I did from the age of 12. I was really I was like this mini missionary, you know. So fast forward, of course, if anybody's comes from the Jehovah's Witness religion, you know that dating in the religion is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, I pretty much feel like I had an arranged marriage for all practical purposes. I pretty much knew that my dad was never going to let me date.
Hmm.
So, I also helped my dad do construction work, and because he was a general contractor, and he would like apprentice brothers over the summers, and he was training young brothers to do construction work. And there was a brother that was about 10 years older than me. I'm the ripe old age of 17, and this guy was 10 years older than me. And I show up at work one afternoon and the brother is there, and we're alone. We're alone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my dad's gonna freak out. And he says, no, it's okay. Your dad knows because we've already talked and we decided that, I want to marry you. I'm like, okay. Okay, doke. I
Old
did know
school
his
arranged,
family.
old school arranged
Yeah,
marriage.
for all practice, I mean, I did know him. I had pioneered with his younger sisters, but it wasn't like some organic, oh yeah, we like
Right.
each other. It was like, already talked to your dad and we're good.
You're going to be my wife.
Exactly, exactly. And in the religion, as a woman, you're very limited in what you're able to do in the religion.
Hmm.
So aside, other than pioneering, that's where you're capped out as a woman. So you need a good husband. And this guy, he had the spiritual resume. He had the spiritual resume. He's, also comes from like 4 or 5 generations of witnesses. He's an elder, he's a regular pioneer. His dad was, his grandpa was. It was a very, very pillar family in the area. So it sounds great, right? Sounds totally
Hmm.
great.
It's good on paper.
Totally great on paper. Totally great on paper. I look good on paper. It, with the threefold cord of God in the marriage, why would this not work, right? So, typical Jehovah's Witness fashion, we were never alone, never alone. He didn't kiss me, he didn't hold my hand. I'm like, oh, this is so spiritual. This is how you're supposed to be when you're super spiritual. So we get married right as I turned 18, and it was a nightmare from the wedding night. Basically, he spent the wedding night crying in the shower. He didn't want to have anything to do with me. And of course, you're so naive as far as what is normal, what is a normal couple relationship. You're, especially being homeschooled too, you
Completely
don't,
sheltered.
you're so sheltered, so naive, ridiculously naive. And so shortly after we got married, my sister-in-laws take me aside and they're like, there's some stuff about our family you should know. And I'm just like blown away because they start telling me about all this abuse that there's been in the family. And I came from a very strict Jehovah's Witness family, but there was no abuse in my family. It was a very loving family. And I had no idea that things like that happened in the religion. We're God's religion, right? Happens to the Catholics, but doesn't happen to us.
Right.
And, the abuse kind of like opened my eyes to maybe there's something deeper wrong with him than I knew. And and even at that, it took me years to put the pieces together and figure it out. We were given an assignment by Bethel to do international construction work after we'd been married for about 5 months. So we went to Bethel in Mexico to build the branch in Mexico. And the 6 months that we were there, he was a completely absent spouse, absent husband. Here you have like this, 18-year-old wife. You'd think you'd want to hang out with her, but he'd be off camping with guys. I'm not invited. They'd go off to give a talk somewhere and I'm not invited. Years later, I found out that there was like 4 guys in that group that had been disfellowshipped for homosexuality. And, I'm like,
I was
oh,
gonna ask that, but
for
I
them, without thinking that, wait a second, maybe I was married to somebody that was gay. I
he's
mean, it
down
was
low.
years late. I mean, obviously, I don't have proof
Right.
because we never had any of those conversations. But, you're married to somebody who doesn't want to sleep with you and hangs out with guys all the time. That's
Fill in
a
the
pretty good
blanks.
conclusion.
Hmm.
So I lasted for about 2.5 years, and he was also extremely narcissistic, extremely emotionally abusive. In retrospect, I would assume that he probably married me hoping that I could, cure him or whatever. And then was either angry or punished me. It's my fault because I didn't. So it was ridiculously, ridiculously abusive. And I just kind of snapped after about 2.5 years. I just kind of
Okay.
snapped and I just went, I had gone to my family. I had gone, they're elders. My dad and my uncles were elders. And I was like, we've got some problems I need to talk about. And it's always like, leave it in Jehovah's hands, study more, pray harder,
Hmm.
everything's going to be okay. As long as you're spiritual, everything's going to be okay. And it was like, yeah, no, this is not okay. I'm 20. I would think at the time I was like 20 or barely 21. I'm like, I don't know how to live my entire life like this. It's so bad after 2 years. Yeah, this is, I no, I'm not gonna make it. So I left. I got disfellowshipped. I got disfellowshipped when I was 21. But again, remember, I'm not waking up or anything like that. I just, got disfellowshipped because I left.
Right.
And and about 6 months later, I end up getting pregnant. So of course, so now I'm pregnant and I'm like, uh, what am I gonna do? Celebrate Christmas with my kid and take her to the Catholic Church? No, I want her to have grandparents and uncles and cousins, and I want her to have family. And, I might be willing to risk my own everlasting life, but I'm not going to risk my kids.
Right.
So, in order to get reinstated, if anybody is not familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses, you either need to stay celibate for the rest of your life or marry the kid's dad you know? So, he was like, okay, this is my kid. All right, fine, let's get married. So we get married and I get reinstated. And so obviously I didn't know this guy really well either. I mean, this was not a whole, let's live together and see if we're compatible. And, this was kind of like crash course number two.
Right.
Um, Actually, really, in retrospect, not really fair to him either. He
Hmm.
met me when I was disfellowshipped, and now all of a sudden he has a like super righteous JW wife,
Right.
which is not exactly a really good foundation either. So, obviously this marriage came with tons of complications too. I do get reinstated, and he was one of those assembly worthy experience unbelieving mates. He was the one that threw my literature out, and
Oh,
you
he's a
know,
poser.
absolutely, absolutely, not necessarily sure I can blame him. It's a cult, so and so that was. And I'm like faithfully sneaking out of the house to go to the meetings and bring my kids to the meetings and it was ridiculously, ridiculously, ridiculously challenging.
Hmm.
And so we end up having three small children pretty quickly. And we do end up getting a divorce. He ended up leaving me because finally he's just like, you choose your God or me, choose your religion or me.
Hmm.
And like I'm super faithful, right? So I choose my God. I'm not going to leave my God. I'm not going to leave my religion. And so he ended up leaving me, and I ended up getting a divorce number two. I need flow charts for the husbands. So this is
I know.
divorce number two.
PowerPoint.
I know, right? So I'm at the ripe old age of 28, and I've got three small children. They were, I think, like 4, 3, and 2 at the time. And in the Jehovah's Witness religion, a single mom with three small children who's been divorced twice, she's been disfellowshipped and reinstated. I no longer have a very good resume.
Right.
I'm now like untouchable, right? I'm like, nobody's going to touch me with a 10-foot pole.
Yep.
And so so there was a circuit overseer, a retired circuit overseer in my congregation who's like, "Oh, guess what? I have a son. I have a son who needs a wife." And I know this sounds hilarious, and I'm going to laugh a lot through this because it's freaking hilarious. I mean,
Hmm.
this is like JW comedy or something. I mean, how does this really happen? Does this really happen in real life? Yes, this really happens in real life. This is the real life story. So along comes husband number three. He was also an elder, circuit overseer's son, 20 years older than I was. So I'm 28 and he's, 48. And he's willing to take on three small children. And he's going to be the spiritual head. And I'm, of course, when you're brainwashed in a cult, it's important your children's spirituality and all that bullshit. And so, whoops, can I say that? I don't know if I can say
Yeah, I don't care. I don't think
that.
YouTube's gonna censor it, so yes, all good.
So here I am at 28 with three small kids, and I'm remarried for the third time. And so, of course, these are all very poor choices. These are all very bad decisions. But when you grow up in a cult, you make poor choices because you're in a cult. So you make the best choice out of really crappy options.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality of being in a cult that doesn't encourage you to be educated. It doesn't encourage you
To be
to
a free
get to
thinker, to think
know.
for yourself, or critical thinker.
Yep, yep. It absolutely forbids you to be alone with the person that you're about to marry, to really get to know them. And so it really kind of sets you up for failure. It really kind of
Hmm.
sets you up for disaster. And so, of course, husband number three is an alcoholic. Is an alcoholic. So, but, I can't get divorced a third time because then I'm really going to be screwed. So you just kind of have to, make the best of
Hmm.
it. So at this point, I was regular pioneering again. We were in a Spanish congregation, so my three little kids all spoke Spanish, and we had what looked like on the surface the picture perfect Jehovah's Witness family. It's the elder husband, it's the little kids that all bilingual. I'm the regular pioneer. They all raise their little hands and they have their little watchtowers all studied in their hand. I mean, on the surface, this looks like picture perfect picture perfect Jehovah's Witness. But behind the scenes, he's an alcoholic. He has fits of rage. He will smash a television screen. And, I just kind of have to put up the front that, well, what am I supposed to do? Just serve Jehovah as best you can. Um, and I would add too that my family did know of some of the challenges that I was going through. And everybody's opinion, pretty much hands down, was, you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. You never should have left the first husband. If you'd have stayed with the
Yeah.
first husband, none of this would have happened. Never blaming the religion, never blaming lack of choices, lack of education. This is all, well, you reap what you sow. This is what you get. You sin, and now you're going to pay the price for the rest of eternity. No matter how much you try to make up for it, this is what you get kind of attitude,
Hmm.
And I don't know. I think supposedly, I mean, I think probably in some ways I kind of bought into that because I really didn't know any different. I really didn't know any different. So probably the only good thing that came out of this marriage is he was, go figure, for work, he was a life coach. Oh, the hypocrisy, right? So he's a life coach and he was certified with neuro-linguistic programming, which is a very, very, very powerful transformation tool. And
Hmm.
this kind of opened up my mind to the world of psychology, which as a sheltered Jehovah's Witness, I had never learned anything about the power of the mind and your ability to create your own reality and to heal yourself. And I got certified as I was still one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but I was doing the life coaching. And the funny part about this is we lived in Utah, so all of our clients were Mormons. I'm supposed to be doing business coaching, sales coaching, financial coaching, and stuff like that. But when somebody doesn't meet their professional goals, it's almost always because they have personal life issues. So these Mormons would come to me and they're like, "Well, you probably don't understand this, but we just got excommunicated and our family doesn't talk to us and we've just left our religion and we're having, we've," and I'm like, actually,
There's some
funny enough, I
parallels there.
do get that.
Parallels.
We are 100% sister cults. We
Oh,
don't believe the
definitely.
same, but the structure is 100% the same. So with these Mormons, I didn't go into the religious aspect. I didn't need to. They had already left their religion. So my job was strictly 100% helping them rebuild their life post cult. So I had created this whole program because there's very specific things, there's religious deprogramming and then there's lifestyle reprogramming.
Right.
They also consider it, the world.
Hmm.
So you've got to restructure, how do you view worldly people? How
Yep.
do you integrate into the world outside of your cult? How do you recreate your future? How do you, how do you reconcile losing all of those years in a cult? So there was all of these things that are the lifestyle reprogramming, and that was really what I ended up specializing in. Ironically, hypocritically enough, hypocritically enough, here I am, an active Jehovah's Witness, and I'm helping these Mormons reestablish their life post cult, never imagining that at some point I was going to need this myself. Never even
Hmm.
imagine. And also, funny enough, confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance. I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
wow, they're totally a cult. And not drawing the parallels that, hello, me too.
Me too.
Not in any way this did not wake me up. This did not wake me up that I was also in a cult because, that's how confirmation bias works. I could go into the psychology aspect of why we don't wake up, why we've been brainwashed, why we couldn't see it. I mean, the Jehovah's Witness religion uses every technique in the book. They are classic at manipulation. And especially if you're born into the religion, there is literally no way you can see it unless you like get hit with a bat on the head. I mean, literally, it is difficult to see. And I also help ex-Jehovah's Witnesses reconcile that because a lot of them were like, how did we not see it? I'm so
Right.
stupid. How did I not? Well, you know what? Don't blame yourself. It actually really wasn't your fault because they're using pretty sophisticated psychological tools that
Hmm.
bypass your reasoning, your critical thinking. And it's not really your fault when you don't see it. So don't beat yourself up too much over that. So here I am, I'm helping these Mormons, and then eventually we decide that we want to go serve where the need is great. And so we choose to go to the Dominican Republic. So we move our little family to the Dominican Republic with my little kids, and we're serving where the need is great. regular pioneering. He's an elder, foreign language congregations. We actually ended up in a Haitian Creole congregation. So my kids ended up learning another language on top of Spanish and English. And so again, on paper, it really looks like, we are living the best life ever.
Yeah.
We're the solid pillar family, but on the
Exemplary.
inside, go ahead.
Yeah, I said exemplary family. The example.
Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
100%, 100%, yearbook interviews. I mean, we were the core pillar Jehovah's Witness family. And behind closed doors, it was just absolute hell, absolute hell. He was a severe alcoholic. The level, I'd like to point out too, the the submission that a Christian wife is supposed to have is basically you are a fucking sorry. You get it.
It's fine.
Whoops.
I interviewed my dad the other day. He was like saying all sorts of craziness.
Well, I get really passionate about that because, the level of oppression, suppression that you go through as a female in the organization it's crazy. It's crazy. He actually labeled himself the priest of the house. I mean, every decision of the house, I mean, even down to, groceries and what I wore and everything had to go
Yeah.
through the head of the house. In the meantime, he's an alcoholic. He'll be taking 2 or 3 shots in the car before we go into the meeting to steady his nerves for a
Wow.
part. He actually had an accident. He fell and dislocated his shoulder, so he ended up getting prescribed pain medications. So now we're going to add opiates on into it, which in a foreign country are way easier to get even than in the United States. So now he's combining pain pills with alcohol, and this was clearly another disaster waiting to be happened. I There was domestic violence, and eventually it got to the point where I couldn't hide bruises. Here I am, an elder's wife, and I've got a black eye and another black eye, and one of the elders came to me and he says, there's only so many times that you can say a motorcycle helmet hit you in the face, and he says you're gonna have to talk about this because yeah, he was actually a very sincere elder. We need to keep the congregation clean. This is not exemplary and this is not okay. And you're going to have to say something. So, of course, being fully indoctrinated too, I really wanted to do things. I want to do things Jehovah's way.
Hmm.
So I went and I talked to the brothers and I told them about the domestic violence, which they were not really surprised about because at get-togethers and stuff like that, they would see him drinking. And I guess apparently in elders meetings, he would do the fits of rage and, blow up and stuff like that. So they weren't really surprised. So he gets a committee meeting and he ends up getting publicly reproved and deleted as an elder. He was such a narcissist. His ego, he lived for those privileges. I mean, he absolutely 100%, that was his identity. That was everything that made him an important human being, and I stole that from him. So, of course, he doesn't take responsibility for his actions, but this is completely my fault because I'm not submissive enough to shut up, and I'm the one that did it to him. So he clears out the bank accounts overnight and abandons me and 3 kids in the Dominican Republic.
So Deanna Moore is with us. She hails from Ecuador and has a very interesting Jehovah's Witness story. She was married 3 times, had 3 children, got disfellowshipped several times. And so we'll pick up the story. You were having some issues with your third marriage. He was an alcoholic. So what happens after you drains your bank account and you were kind of stranded?
Yeah, so So actually, I was only disfellowshipped the one time. And at this
Okay.
point, yeah, at this point, the elder's wife, and we're serving where the need is great in the Dominican Republic. And because of the bruises and the extreme domestic violence, he'd also been seen, publicly intoxicated at get-togethers and stuff like that. So I had to report him, and he got publicly reproved, deleted as an elder. And so he proceeded to clear out the accounts, clear out the bank accounts, and abandon me and the kids pretty much penniless in the Dominican Republic. So he went back to our home congregation. I tried to stay there in the Dominican Republic, but financially, I really couldn't. I couldn't manage it. So I needed to go back to the States to recuperate financially. And I had intended on then going back to the Dominican Republic with the kids. So, side note here, the kids' biological father, who was the non-believer, he had not paid child support. He had not seen the kids in about 10 years. I think he'd seen the kids maybe 3 times. So he was not in the picture at all. And so I go back. I end up going back. I go to California where I knew some people, and I was starting to get myself together financially when the kids' dad calls kind of out of the blue, and he says, "I would like to see the kids." He did have legal visitation, so it wasn't like I could just say no. He did have legal visitation. So he picks up the kids, and then he calls me and he says, "You will never see these kids again. You will never see these kids again." So of course, I've been abandoned in the Dominican Republic. I'm penniless. I'm reestablishing myself financially, and then now all of a sudden, my kids are basically kidnapped. And what was complicated about this is, of course, now my family, on the marriage side, the third marriage side, my family is telling me that I need to reconcile, that I'm not being submissive, that this is my fault, and I'm the one that the reason why my kids have been kidnapped is because I'm not doing things Jehovah's way. Never mind the fact, nobody's pointing out the fact that he financially abandoned us, that he's the one that left. Somehow it now falls on my head to be the submissive wife and reconcile and make all this okay, you know? So, so now I have a cross country custody battle. The kids are in Florida, I'm in California. The custody paperwork, as well as coincidentally, the third husband is in Colorado. So I literally have this cross country challenge here, you know? So I wait until I talk to, obviously I'm talking to attorneys, and they're like, this is a jurisdictional nightmare.
Mhm.
They're wanting like $20,000 retainer fees. Obviously, none of that is financially possible
Feasible.
whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, not at all. And in the back of my head, I'm like, well, maybe I don't need an attorney because, first of all, hello, who takes kids away from the mom, and how does the mom lose? I mean, that's not going to happen. And in the Jehovah's Witness religion, they will frequently tell you too, there will be legal help if religion is an issue in a custody battle. And so I'm like, I'm in good standing. I'm still a regular pioneer. I will have Jehovah's backing. Clearly Jehovah doesn't want my children to be raised in the world. Clearly this is all going to be okay. I don't have to worry about the attorneys and stuff like that. So the first custody hearing, I go to Colorado, which is my home congregation, and it's where my family is and stuff like that. And of course, I'm assuming that, maybe I could couch surf or something while I'm going to court and everything. So I show up at my congregation, my old congregation, and I'm like, "Hi, everybody, hi." I'm raising my hand to answer, and I'm just invisible. I'm just totally invisible. And I'm like, what the heck? You people know me. I mean, you guys have known me for 20 years. What's going on? And then one of the elders in that congregation pulls me aside and he says, "Oh, we know about you. We know about you. You're an apostate." And I go, "What? What?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, your husband's told us all about you. You're an apostate." And I go, "I'm not an apostate. I'm not. I'm not even questioning anything here. Like, how do we fix this?" And I'm like, "Well, you're just gonna need to let time pass and you'll eventually prove it if you're not, Jezebel." I'm like, "Wait, what? What?" I'm gonna be treated like I'm an apostate? You know,
Before you become an apostate, you're an
I'm not
apostate.
even an apostate. I am now, but at the time, I'm like, "What? No." So this is what happened. For those of you who are not familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses, you can't just like show up at a congregation and pretend you're all great. They send like this report card that follows you, which is basically kind of like explains who you are. It's like an introduction letter. This is person is this and this person is this. So when the third husband arrived at our congregation, he should have had a letter that said he just got publicly reproved. He's been deleted as an elder for domestic violence. They should have known that. They should have known that. However, I didn't know this at the time. I found this out later. My father-in-law was the ex-circuit overseer. His dad was an ex-circuit overseer. They know how the system works. And so what they did to, protect his son's reputation is this, report card letter thing that follows Jehovah's Witnesses from congregation to congregation. They had it sent to a different congregation where my circuit overseer father-in-law had buddies. And they cleaned the letter up. They cleaned it up so it didn't say he's been reproved and all of that. It said he's in good standing and he's separated from his wife because she's an apostate.
Just lied.
Absolutely flat out manipulated the system. Absolutely flat out manipulated the system. And in the Jehovah's Witness religion, the word of the spiritual head.
It's much stronger.
Yep. They're not going to listen to me. I'm just some lowly Jezebel woman and they can't believe me anyway because apparently I'm an apostate.
Right.
So I have no recourse whatsoever, and then my family's thinking I have a bad attitude because clearly I get married and get married and divorced all the time. So I'm already like, not doing
Sketchy,
things Jehovah's
not
way.
credible, right?
Right, right.
Questionable.
Yep, totally. And so pretty much everybody thinks I'm an apostate. And you know, so what am I supposed to do with that? I really, really, so I did not get any sort of support whatsoever through the child custody thing, anything like that. I was completely, completely on my own. I did end up losing custody because the religion was totally an issue. He accused me of raising the children in a cult.
I wonder why.
Can't necessarily, in retrospect, I can't really blame him for that. I did.
Right.
I did. I raised my children in a cult, you know, and and then I'm not financially stable or anything like that. So he gets full custody of the kids, and it was really too a total case of parental alienation. When he took the kids, he severed all contact. And so he's worldly, so he's giving them Christmas and birthdays and basically giving them the life that Jehovah's Witnesses don't allow.
Mhm.
And when you combine that with not being allowed to even speak to their mother to explain or defend themselves or anything, um, I end up losing my kids, not just physically, but their hearts too.
Sorry about that.
So, well, in retrospect, obviously, I would never say, "Oh, good, I can't wait to lose my kids." But I don't know that I ever would have left the religion voluntarily. I
Mhm.
wasn't questioning or anything like that. So, maybe I'm glad that my children are not in the religion. I'm glad that they got out. I know they'll have their own tons of trauma because they were raised in a cult
Mhm.
with a stepfather that was an alcoholic. So, but they got out. So there's that. Um, I could go on with so many details about how hard I tried to prove that I was not an apostate, and I just got the door completely slammed on me. And And so that's it. I'm an apostate now.
Listening to your story, it's almost like another force was trying to wake you up. Like another force is like, you don't want to be in this religion, but it took you a while to realize that.
Well, that's funny because where I am now at this point in my life, I do believe that we are here for on a spiritual soul journey.
Hmm.
And I think the experiences that we go through help you level up. And, I could go into tons of detail about that too, but I think that the universe was giving me red flags all along.
Oh,
And
definitely.
yeah, and I'm just like, no, 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 this is the truth. I gotta say the truth. I gotta say the truth. And I wasn't paying attention to the red flags. And I think the universe finally said, okay, so you're not going to do the jump yourself.
We're going to kick you
We're
out.
going to push you off the cliff.
Exactly. Yep. I think that's what happened. So how
Yeah.
did we get here? Where are you now spiritually? Sounds like you're very spiritual. I'm just speaking my language now. So how did you end
Yeah.
up waking up finally?
So 38 years in the religion, 20 of those years regular pioneering. I was as hard indoctrinated Jehovah's Witness as you get, but now I find myself being accused of being an apostate. And so at that point, I was pretty much just like, okay, well, I guess there's something wrong with me. Jehovah must see something in my heart that he doesn't want. I'm just going to accept this and I'm going to live my best life outside of the religion as best I can until Armageddon comes. So this is where the life coaching came in because it's funny. When I had all of that experience with coaching the Mormons, rehabilitating themselves after the religion. That's what I started doing with myself. It
Mhm.
was rebuilding my beliefs about money, my beliefs about education, my beliefs, the bitterness, the resentment for 38 years wasted in a cult. I had to heal that because you cannot thrive if you're bitter. You cannot thrive if you're angry. You have to heal that if you're going to move forward.
So yeah, kind of
So
deconstruct your whole life basically.
exactly, exactly. Because there's the religious beliefs, which I had not woken up yet. So I wasn't really deconstructing the religious beliefs. I was reconstructing the lifestyle because there's the religious beliefs and there's the lifestyle beliefs that are a result of the religion, like what you wear, the world is dangerous, it's going to chew you up and spit you out, I mean, all of that stuff
Worldly people are evil. Yes, all those thoughts.
will cripple you because now you're in the world.
Now
So
you're
there's all
worldly.
exactly, exactly. So there was so much. I would sit down and I would coach myself for like 6 and 8 hours at a time because I knew that, here I am penniless. I have no family. I have no friends. I didn't go to public school, so I don't even like know worldly people.
Right.
And I now am, like you said, I am now worldly. So I have to embrace this with my whole heart so that I can thrive, right? So that's what I did. Money issues was a big thing, feeling like I was not going to have any opportunities because of lack of education. I mean, all of that stuff I had to reprogram. And so but then religiously speaking, I went kind of atheist. I'm like, clearly religion is a snare and a racket.
Which it kind of is.
It kind of is, right? So I don't believe in religion. Part of that too was um so I'm reconstructing my life. I go pretty atheist for a little while. And I'm just going about my life. I had a very successful career in real estate where I was able to use my coaching. And, my first year in real estate, I had 19 transactions, which is kind of phenomenal in
Right.
the real estate world, but I had coached real estate agents before. I had a really solid background in financing, business. And like I said, what I really, really focused on when I was restructuring my beliefs was a lot of money beliefs because in the psychology world, your beliefs shape your reality. So
Mhm.
if you believe that it's hard to make money, it is absolutely 100% true for you.
Yeah.
But if you change that, if you believe that anything is possible, the world shapes to that reality. You
Yep.
literally mold reality to fit what your beliefs are. And I was already the expert in that. So now it was time to apply it to myself. So I was doing really well. I met my fourth husband who's in the world, and we were working together to, create this new life together. It was probably about 2 years after that that I finally accidentally read Crisis of Conscience. And that was when I was like, whoa, okay, doke. I grew up in a cult. And then I really started blowing up all of the religious beliefs. So I think a lot of times when people come out of the religion, you're so shocked because you've lost your world, you've lost your family, you've lost your reality. And I think it kind of freaks us out a little bit. And we stop asking questions because maybe we don't want to know the answers. But in
Yeah.
my case, I was like, okay, these beliefs were handed to me and I accepted it, no question. What else is in my head that I accepted without questioning? So I start questioning the Bible. I start questioning the validity of the Bible and everything to do my own investigation, you know? And funny enough, funny enough, I even thought, okay, I don't believe in the Bible, but I'm going to give it another chance. I'm going to give it another chance. So, who has more compiled proof that the Bible is true than Jehovah's Witnesses and the all scripture inspired book, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna now with my eyes open with some critical thinking skills, I'm gonna read the all scriptures inspired book because that would have all of the evidence, the evidence that the Bible is true. So I got through like chapter one of the all scriptures inspired book, and by like halfway through the chapter, I'm laughing hysterically because the confirmation bias was insane. I mean, the opening paragraph of that book is clearly the Bible is the inspired word of God because the Bible says all scriptures is inspired of God. And I'm like, wait a second, that's not proof, man.
Right.
Like, clearly Genesis is accurate because the book of Matthew says it is. I'm like, wait a second, we read this book like 100 times. We studied this book like forever. And
Hmm.
I just took it, I just took it for
As
granted.
gospel. Yep.
Yeah, no kidding. And I was like, okay, all right. So, obviously the Bible's off the table because there is no proof whatsoever other than we were told
Someone
so,
said it. Yep.
other than somebody said so. So I find myself not believing in the Bible, not believing in God, completely atheist. And then, drum roll, I had one of the most shocking experiences of my life. So I had an uncle who was an elder. He'd been an elder all my life. He had no children. So I was the niece that was going to take care of him. We were actually very, very close. I know that when I was accused of being an apostate, technically I was never even disfellowshipped. I'm
Right.
just an apostate. I'm sure that I know that crushed him. I know that crushed him. So here I am. I'm this happy little apostate, atheist apostate. I'm reading a book on psychology in my living room about 7, 8 o'clock at night. I'm not drinking. I'm not smoking. I'm not doing psychedelics, nothing. And he appears right in front of me. And I just get like this warm sense of peace, other than the shock, I just get like this warm sense of peace and
Mm.
this warm sense of calm. And the first thing he says to me is, honey, I'm so sorry. I thought we were doing the right thing and I was wrong. He says, everything that we thought is wrong. And I'm like, you can imagine our background growing up, obviously we don't believe in life after death, and now I'm an atheist and stuff like that. And this was like a 20-minute conversation.
Mhm.
So, obviously I'm in shock. Then I find out on Facebook like 3 days later that he died. So now I'm really shocked. I
Right.
I am a highly analytical, I'm a very logical person. And so I could not explain this in any way, shape, or form. Had I known he was dead, I would have blamed my imagination.
Right.
Had I been drinking or whatever, I would have blamed it
Alcohol.
on, yep, I would have blamed it. I would have blamed it on that. Had I been searching for answers. If I'd have been watching ghost movies or like reading books on life after death, I would have blamed it on my imagination. None of that was the case, though. None of that was the case. So I even thought, I wonder if the demons are trying to trick me. And I was like,
Right.
well, that doesn't make sense because I'm an atheist apostate. I'm like solid in their camp. I'm
You're already on that side.
already on their side. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yep.
So that started this whole other journey, which has led me here to Ecuador. It has led to I love this part. This is probably my favorite part of the journey. And this is why the universe kicked me out of the religion in the brutal fashion that it did, because this is the path that I was meant to be on.
Yep.
So that experience with my uncle really led me onto this path of, okay, well, atheism doesn't answer all the questions, and clearly the Bible doesn't isn't the key. So what is this? Where are the answers? And I started a research of humanity. I mean, I have all these books behind me. These are books on religion, philosophy, humanities, the history of humanity. And my idea was, if I could figure out what humanity has in common, what are our common beliefs, maybe that will give me some sort of basis for putting some puzzle pieces together. So the first thing that all humanity pretty much has in common is that there is some sort of source. There is some sort
Hmm.
of creator. There is some sort of origin. That humans are special. That there is some sort of something out there. And I thought, okay, all right, let me just run for that with that for a second and see where that takes us. The second thing that pretty much every culture, every humanity has believed since the beginning of time is that we are children of said source, that humans are special, that we have the ability to think, reason, create. We have the ability to have a spiritual connection. There is energy. There is something special and unique about humans. We're children of God. We are special. And I thought, okay, let me run with that for a second. So, the third thing that pretty much everyone has in common for the history of forever is that there is life after death, that this is not the only experience. And even scientifically, that made sense to me because energy does not die.
Hmm.
It transforms, it can
Yep.
it can go
It's
from
neither
one
created nor
shape to
destroyed.
another.
Right.
Yeah. It can transform, but it doesn't die.
Right.
And then I had that experience with my uncle and I went, okay, all right. Okay. So these three things is pretty much what humanity has in common. There's a source, there's a creator, we are children of the source, and that there is something more than this life. There is life after this.
Hmm.
From there, humanity kind of starts going in its different directions, but those are the three things that humanity has in common. So I thought, okay, there's a source, we're children of the source, there's life after this. Does that automatically mean that the source requires worship?
Mm. That's a good
And
question.
right. And I thought, okay, so no, not necessarily. No, not necessarily. We always use that scripture in Hebrews 10:24 and 25. It says, every house is created by someone, and he that created all things is God. Therefore, worship him. But not necessarily. I had a background in construction. I had an engineer that built my house. He's gone and doesn't require anything.
Hmm.
So perhaps the no, maybe he doesn't require anything. And as I meditated on that, I thought, well, if the source did require something, he could probably make it pretty clear, and he hasn't. There are all these religious backgrounds where everybody has all of these different methods, and apparently the creator doesn't really have an opinion, because if worship were that important, he could have made it really clear,
It
and he
made it
didn't.
required. Yep.
Exactly, and he didn't. So with all that in mind, I thought, okay, so there is a source, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he requires worship.
Right.
So awesome. That allows us to really start developing what, the concept of energy and the concept of how do we progress in this life. And that was a beautiful place to be.
Mm.
So your hard line's coming up.
Yeah. Let's go a little bit. I can go a little bit longer. I have some questions that I want to ask you, then we'll kind of wrap it up. Let's keep going though.
Okay. Okay. So this to me, at the same time, I was also in absolutely fascinated by quantum physics, by, particle entanglement, and I really love science. And I kind of felt like maybe this was the merge between both, that
Mhm.
there was now an explanation between quantum physics and science and spirituality, that religion doesn't answer anything, but now we actually have a background for being able to understand the scientific universe that we live in, the energetic universe that we live in. One thing that I had always had kind of one of the red flags that the universe gave me, I think, when I started learning psychology, was that there are a lot of things in religion that are completely psychologically messed up.
Mhm.
So even this idea that you must worship the creator is actually psychologically damaging.
That he demands worship.
Yep, yep,
Hmm.
yep. A healthy parent does not demand that their children worship them. In fact, in the human world, we would call that narcissistic. We would call that even abusive. A healthy parent wants their children to thrive, but doesn't require anything of them. And as I studied psychology and I was coaching, in some ways I was kind of like, well, obviously at the point I was still brainwashed. So I'm like, okay, I guess he just knows better than this. But that was in my head, that how is that psychologically helpful? The concept of being a born sinner, that it is undeserved loving kindness, that, probably maybe you might be concealed in the day of Jehovah's wrath. I mean, all of that is contrary to healthy psychological human development.
Yep.
It is actually damaging. When I was working with clients, one of the first things that I would start helping them with is, you're born worthy, you're born deserving, that love is unconditional, and you are, that is the basis for psychologically healthy human development. And religion crushes
Obliterates that.
that. It's completely
Obliterates it.
opposite,
Yep.
completely opposite. And so how is it that God, being the ultimate psychologist, obviously the creator of human psychology, thinks that this is a good idea? you know the concept of being a born sinner, and then the ransom sacrifice. I think when I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I think the chapter on the ransom sacrifice was my absolute least favorite chapter to study with people, because, you know, Jesus died for your sins. And they'd be like, how does that happen? I'm like, well, Adam lost a perfect life, and so we needed to give a
Balance it
perfect
out.
life. And I'm like, try saying that in a court of law. I
Right.
killed my son so that these people could live. They would lock you in prison forever, because that does not make sense. And we just justify it. We were like, well, God's wisdom and justice is so much higher than us. No, we are made in his image. And if that does not make sense to us, it doesn't, and we're stupid. How
Right.
does that make even greater logical sense? It does not make sense. And how damaging is this psychologically? You are so bad, you are such a sinner, that somebody has to die for you. You're so bad. That is damaging. That is psychologically traumatizing, as a matter of fact. Can you imagine? Can you
So it sounds
imagine?
like you've done a lot of introspection, you've done a lot of research. So let me ask you this.
Tons.
We're kind of at the point where I can sort of ask these questions.
Mhm.
What would be your definition, or how would you explain a spiritual awakening to someone?
How would I explain spiritual awakening for somebody? First of all, I would say that your own confirmation bias is going to be your worst enemy. So if you've already started deconstructing your religion, whether it's Mormon or Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever, you need to keep asking questions, because basically any belief that is in your head is probably suffering from confirmation bias.
Hmm.
So keep asking those questions. One thing that I think I also really had in my favor too is when I started coaching in 2005. That was about the same time that the book The Secret came out, where it was all about manifesting and the law of attraction
Hmm.
and energy and your vibrations. And I would love to talk about that for an entire hour
I'll bring
because
you
when I
back.
learned
You're
when I
talking my language,
learned
so I
about
love the
that,
spirit. I love spiritual conversations, so I love
oh,
this.
this
Yep.
was that was well, and so as a brainwashed Jehovah's Witness, I'm learning about the law of attraction. I'm like, oh, this is how Jehovah's going to bring us to perfection, and oh, this is how he answers prayers. It's through the power of energy, and it's the power of vibrations. I mean, I can explain scientifically how prayers were answered. There are very specific steps that are there, and I always wondered, how is it? Why does God answer worldly people's prayers? It's because we are working in harmony with these energetic principles that we
Yep.
have been left with. And when you follow the step,
It's
you
gonna
know,
work.
it's going to work. Call it prayer, call it manifesting, call it whatever you
Hmm.
want. We are all following these exact same steps. So keep digging. That's what I would say about spiritual awakening, because spirituality and religion have nothing
To do
to
with
do
each.
with each other.
Nope.
They have nothing to do with each other. We have this inborn ability to access spirituality because we are
Spiritual
energetic
beings.
beings.
Yep.
Yep, 100%. We are energetic spiritual beings. And because we have, because through thousands of years of human history, obviously we couldn't explain quantum physics thousands of years ago, so we called it God. We
Right.
called it, we had to find a way to satisfy that spiritual need through religion. And I think humanity is really experiencing an awakening right now, where
Definitely.
they are leaving religion because they're realizing that it's abusive, it's controlling, and that there is so much more out there.
It's
That
across
there's
the
so
board.
much more out
It's
there
not just with the JWs, it's with all people who've been born
with
in
all
religions.
religions.
It's universal, really, what's going on right now.
People are feeling a call back to their roots, ancestral healing, generational trauma, plant medicines. I'm here in Ecuador and I do treatments of ayahuasca, which is DMT, San Pedro, which is in the mescaline family,
Mm.
psilocybin, which are fantastic tools for healing. I mean, one session of a plant medicine treatment is like worth 5 years of therapy. I mean, they are here on this planet to help us re-access the gifts that we've been giving. I mean, they say that we only use like 5% of our ability,
Yep.
and these plant medicines really help you unlock everything else that is there. I could go on about this forever too. I mean, even in our own DNA, scientifically, we've only been able to map out approximately 10% of our DNA, and the other 90% they call junk
Junk.
DNA.
Yep.
Junk DNA. Now, that is not possible just because
There's
you
the
don't
there's
understand.
two strands I think that we've been reduced to, but there's actually 12 strands of DNA that are
Exactly.
gonna come back
Exactly.
online actually.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So, what is in that 90% of our DNA? The 10% that's recorded is this, eyes, hairs, organs, all of this tangible stuff. How would a scientist be able to look at that other 90% and access emotion, generational coding, all of that stuff, which is literally in our DNA that is affecting us, that when we heal that, absolutely 100% transforms your entire existence.
Hmm. So, Nina, let me ask you one more question. I'll kind of wrap things up. In your mind, is there any way you can wake anyone up, or can you ask them questions? I've talked to other people about this. I feel like you can't really wake someone up if they're not ready. But can you wake someone up who's maybe asleep or
I actually do believe that you can,
okay?
because but we tend to go about it the same way that we tried to convert people by preaching, like beating them over the head with it. And that is not the way to do it. You
Right.
cannot do it through logic, because we are emotional, spiritual beings.
Mm.
You have to do it through emotion. And so I actually have a couple videos on my YouTube channel about techniques that you can use that will work with psychology to help trigger critical thinking, that
Right.
starts triggering those phases that you go through. There are very specific phases that somebody goes through when they wake up. emotional phases. And if you can help somebody trigger those emotional states, they can wake up. But maybe we should do a whole video on that, because there are ways to do it. There absolutely are ways to do it. Now, whether that person chooses to accept that or not, that's up to them. But there are definitely techniques that make it more likely and more probable.
So Deanna, if someone wants to learn more about NLP or your YouTube channel, where should they go? What's your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel is, I have two. I have one that's for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and then I have another channel that is specifically for laws of energy, manifesting, and that one is YouTube at Manifesting Minds.
Okay.
And if anybody wants to get in touch with me personally, my email is healingsoulsnlp for neuro-linguistic programming at gmail.com. So maybe we could post, you want to post a link to that too. I'm
Yeah,
more than
I'll put
happy to take
I'll put in the
questions.
description below. Yep.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Talking to Deanna Moore, I want to thank you, Deanna, for spending some time. We'll have to definitely bring you back. There's a lot of things we have to talk about, but have a great day. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Mwah.